Hi everybody, I'm Mike Joy on the Steve Mignante YouTube channel. My son Scott's back there behind the camera. Steve was a big help to us when we started our YouTube channel, Joy Riding. So hope you'll check that out. In the meantime, Steve and I have shared more than 20 years on the block at the live telecasts of collector car auctions and can't wait till we get to do it again. So congratulations on your recovery so far and hurry back. This is not exactly a junkyard crawl, but I would call this car a barn find. Let me tell you about this 1979 MG Midget, a relatively rust-free car, and we'll explain why we're not going to restore it. The MG Midget 1500, the one with the Triumph-sourced engine and the big rubber bumpers, was the final evolution of what began as the Austin Healey Brug-Eye Sprite in 1958. It was the first mass-produced unit body sports car. This entire car is made of folded and formed sections of sheet steel welded together. It has no chassis. It's all made out of sheet steel. Chrysler Corporation had a lot of unit body cars beginning in the 1960s, and now everybody does. Unit body cars are less expensive to produce than a body-on-frame car, and because the body doesn't mount to a frame, there's a lot less vibration, bouncing around, ride harshness, that sort of thing. Unit body is absolutely the right way to build cars. Well, back in '58, it was pretty much a new process, and the English did a great job of designing their economy two-seat sports car, but they didn't know much about where water would trap, where road salt would gather, and where the tin worm would do its work. Well, as a result, and these cars were made from 1958 up through 1979, all it took was one winter's worth of, say, New England road salt, and everything from about here down became dust and rust less than a decade later. That's why there are a lot of these sitting, forlorn, waiting for the right time for someone to restore them. They're get-around-to-it cars, and a lot of them end up in junkyards. Now, everybody has windshields, hoods, and trunk lids and dashboards and things that weren't subject to the rust that was lower down. Engines and transmissions abound. In all, 225,000 of these cars were made during that two-decade period, and they were a terrific, economical sports car. The Bug-Eye Sprite from 1958 to '61, and the first MG Midgets that looked a lot like this beginning in 1961, had a 1-liter engine, 948 cubic centimeters displacement, dual SU carburetors, and about 50 horsepower. A couple of years later, the 948 grew to an 1100 cc engine, and then in 1966 to a 1275 cc unit, very short-stroke, high-revving engine that it continued until they had to smog strangle it, and after 1974, the MG engine was put aside and a Triumph-sourced 1500 went into these cars for the last 5 years of production. The earliest cars had put-away side curtains with sliding plastic windows and a pack-away top that you took the top frame and the convertible top and had to assemble it. Really wasn't very convertible. You took it off and you put it away. In late 1966, they enlarged the cockpit like this, and they added a proper folding top. In 1964, the cars also got roll-up windows, making it a much more civilized car. One thing it didn't get until 1975 was a synchromesh first gear on the 4-speed transmission, so first gear was always kind of a crash box affair. But as you can see, these cars are not very big. They're only 11 feet long. They're only 5 feet wide. And you don't really get in one, you kind of put it on. It's kind of like a go-kart, but with a top and with windows and protection. They're pretty cool. They're a lot of fun, and we have 3 of them that are fully restored, or on the way to being, let's say. That brings us to these cars, the Midget 1500. They used a Triumph-sourced 1500cc engine with a single carb in the United States, and for the first time, an all-synchromesh 4-speed transmission that also came from the Triumph Spitfire. Now, emissions rules pretty much dictated that change, but what really hurt the Midget were the 5-mile-per-hour bumper standards. That meant more than 60 pounds of road-hugging weight added to each end with these Endura plastic-covered heavy metal bumpers, adding pendulum weight to what had previously been a really good handling sports car. Another thing the U.S. government did was they set a minimum height for automotive headlights. That means the Midget had to raise up 1.5 inches on its suspension. It looked so ungainly doing that they changed the profile of this front fender and made the wheel opening lower on the fender so the car wouldn't look like it was doing the Carolina squat. All these changes together made the Midget 1500, the rubber bumper cars, the least valuable of all the MG Midgets from 1961 to 79. And that is why this car sits here. Scott says the best place to find classic cars these days is in Facebook Marketplace, and better yet, in Facebook groups. That's where I found this, in an MG Midget group. A prior owner had taken this car, almost completely disassembled it to get it ready for a repaint, and then lost interest. It was given to a friend who parked it in back of his garage for close to a decade. And that's where we found it and these pictures on Facebook Marketplace. Nobody would give him $500 for a complete Midget that was all apart. Why? Well, if you go to all the trouble to paint this car and restore it, before you're finished, you're upside down in the value proposition. Next, a lot of the rubber parts and things all had to be replaced. You can see from the top of this seat, just the way we pulled it out, that this car sat in the sun for a long, long time before it found its way into his garage. So even though this body is 90% rust-free, we made the decision to part this out. The engine, for $150, goes to Illinois to become a core for rebuilding. The transmission, $200 as a core, that got shipped to Connecticut. The gas tank was shipped out of state. So was the glove box and a lot of the miscellaneous parts. And I've got somebody that wants the dashboard. And the big score here is these late cars have a much taller rear end gear, and that whole differential chunk comes out and it's worth over $300. So altogether, this Midget will return about 3 to 4 times what we gave for it. Plus, we still have a complete body and all of these sheet metal pieces that are in very, very good shape and will probably find their way up north to somebody in the Rust Belt. So we won't be driving this MG Midget, well, anytime soon or ever. And as they say about donor cars, this one gets parted out so that other cars may live and drive again. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check out Scott's and my channel, Joy Riding, here on YouTube. And we'll see you another time on the Steve Mignante channel.